Good morning and welcome back to a short and focused episode of the Building the Lego Legend of Zelda Hyrule Castle from Breath of the Wild in minifigure scale in studio and hopefully real life. So today we're back in the water room, and today's focus is just to get this thing sorted because we've had some problems, we've had some events occur with this room, and I want to get it back up in ship shape form and get it finished and up to full height. So the goal is to basically finish this plate and get another room done. So that's what we're going to be working on today. So already from last time you can see we've made some huge changes, such as the addition of the actual water tower. This wasn't here before, of course. We've basically just made this by creating a core of bricks here. You can see we've got lots of the brickheads piece in here to make up these walls, and then on the side we've done some slot building with some curves that goes into a slope brick here on the sides to create a wider circumference. And obviously this isn't fully visible in the wall, it's only actually half a circle, and this will then of course continue up to the top of the room where we have the balustrade, and that's where the circle becomes a full circle and continues to the roof of this room. However, that's 3 plates up from here. Surrounding that, of course, we have the wooden scaffolding, which is actually inserted upside down, as you might remember last week, inside these grills. However, where that became more complicated was in attaching it to the wall, because of course it means everything's on a half stud offset. To fix this, of course, we have the use of jumper plates in various forms, which of course make the build look a little bit more jumbly, which is good for a scaffolding around this system. However, over here on this wall we actually had such a problem that I decided just to let it lightly rest inside one of these window arch pieces here, and then from the outside of course it just looks like it's part of the wall because the window arch is covered up, but of course we know that it's going through to the other side into this area, and we're going to come back to that because that area is being a right nuisance. As before, of course, we have the barrels on the wall, a couple more torches, and not much has come over here apart from the fact that I finished tiling off the floor. I've also added in the first of 2 platforms where there's a Korok. There will be one above here at the full height of the model where the second Korok will be. Now of course this room's looking a little bit grey, so my goal is to help to change that today. So hopefully we're going to get some crates in here as well as the waterfall, of course, because once we reach the top level and basically the next plate, the design of the room actually changes and becomes this much more interesting, like cross hatching with like wooden beams and so on. So that should make this room a lot more interesting to look at. However, we're faced with one huge problem, and we touched on this last week. So if I go ahead and set this as our origin, this room comes very, very close to the outside. Now after this it's not a problem because there's a huge cliff wall which just goes up and up and up. However, we're faced with the interesting dilemma of this corner here. Now one thing that I have done is I've actually extended this by about 4 studs longer than it was. So originally this was like 4 studs shorter, and that allowed me to actually get at least the part of the room that extends up visible, because this section here doesn't actually extend massively up. The big like hall, or I suppose you would call it like tunnel system, actually only starts here. So I thought if I could corner off this room here, then we can just go straight up and up. However, then of course this is going to be a problem for the entire length of the build, because this wall here is of course going to have slopes on it and other details, and it's going to sort of go backwards as we go, and that's not ideal. So I think we're going to have to make some changes here. However, that's just the beginning of it, because shortly after finishing this farm I was ready to record, and we were going to just do this and then move on to another segment in today's video. However, I made a discovery. I had a look back at the maps, and hopefully you can see one on screen, and if we look at our Hyrule Castle orientation, just like so, you can see that this is skewing way too far off at an angle. Now originally when I made this I thought it was going to be at a 45-degree angle, which is what we spent hours sorting out on a live stream a couple of weeks back when we made this nice angled segment, and I was really, really pleased with it. But I have made the discovery that I think the wall should actually be straight. And we talked about this on a community post and came to the decision that, yeah, it's most likely that this room actually is at a right angle and should continue off in this direction down here. So I'm going to take the slight creative liberty and assume what would actually be like a very, very slant up, maybe like a 5-degree angle wall, and knowing how painful that will be to try and recreate in brick form, I am just going to put the wall on a straight. So the other benefit to this is it will entirely fix our problem with this wall. If you see where it's sat about now, if we take this like line here where the angle changes is where the hallway is going to end, so imagine this wall comes down here, and count maybe 6 or so studs. We can go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Assuming the wall will be here, it has got like a 4 stud clearance for any wall changes as we go up this module. It's legitimately perfect, and I think it's going to solve a lot of the problems, allowing me to get this room done. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to straighten it out, and then we're going to talk about what I actually did, and then I'm going to finish off this room up to its full height, and we are going to get the waterfall in and other exciting elements. So I hope you can understand what I'm doing. I just want to get this room done, and I've got all this motivation, so let's go straight into it. Okay, so the changes have been made and details have been added. I have not quite finished it, but that's okay. However, before we get into it, I want to make a quick announcement for those of you still watching, and that is that the first wave of LEGO Legend of Zelda Custom Set Showcase instructions are now available for free and for paid over on Rubricable. This includes 3 models this time around, and this is our March batch. Keep tabs on the community post if you want to know about the next lot that will be coming out. We have Monk Mask Hosha retailing for £5 on the website. He's a little bit bigger. I would have made him free if I could. And then for the 2 free instructions this time around, we have the Bokoblin enemy count base, which has been modified to be nice and easy and buildable in real life, and also the Lizalfos enemy camp base from Breath of the Wild. Don't worry, Classic Zelda stuff is coming in the March lot, which will be the next wave that I release, but for those of you that are interested, those are now available on Brookable, and keep a tally on the community tab as well if you are interested. So okay, without any further ado, you can see huge changes have happened to this hallway. I can't believe that after so much harassing and like pushing it around, it has just come back to being a straight boring hallway. However, it has made it much easier, and of course this does mean that more of the castle is on grid, meaning it can be more structurally stable. Now I've changed literally nothing about the doorway. All that changed was the fact that it's on an angle, and as I said, I brought the doorway in to the level where the angled plate originally came off, and it's just made things so much nicer under here. You can see also that I've made this area thinner again. As I said in the last clip, I actually extended it to help with the rock wall when it was on an angle. Well, I preferred the proportions originally, so I just took the 4 studs that I added back out again, which obviously is going to reduce the amount of grey overall that we have, and just make it look better. So you can see now I've got this massive clearance gap, so even if you imagine that the wall sort of slants up and up and up as we get to the top of the castle, which it really doesn't, it just gives me some space to put a nice frame on here without worrying about awkward details and so on, because this rock wall here will probably actually be attached to the next layer of the build once we're there, and you can see that we basically are almost at full height on this side, because obviously this part is the easiest. It's now just been able to build, so instead of having these awkward like panel pieces here to block off the corner, you can actually see that it is a full brick wall all the way up. You've got some variations in texture. Obviously I still need to go in and turn a couple of these pieces around to create that nice variation and sort of imperfections within the stonework. You can also see here that I've added a little cobweb. I thought this was a really like neat space to put one, because it's going to be really high up and like really crowded. So I wanted to get some colour in here in all the ways I could, and I thought even with this being a pre-calamity castle, you would have some cobwebs and some dirty bits. It's a really drafty castle after all. So we're definitely going to be adding some moss spots in these lower tunnels and so on as we go through as well. But you can see we've got a cobweb, no spider, just wedged into this very, very small space behind this tower here. I don't really know why I bothered smoothing off this side here, because it really isn't visible, but you know, I know it's there, so I guess that's all that's important. I've also messed around with these 2 platforms here. I decided that this initial one that we had was pretty much in the right spot, so I left it where it was, and then I actually created a newer, smaller one down here lower, which turns out is more accurate into in-game. And of course this is Korok spot number 3 or 4, I don't know how many we've done. There'd be a rock here for you to lift up, which is one of the Koroks found in the game. I didn't touch a lot of the details down here. However, one thing I did add that you can see right here is I added these bracing wall segments. Now these are actually quite common in this room, the water pump room. If you have a look around or go on there, you can see these braces just adding a little bit more texture to the room, sort of slanting up to about this height and then continuing into brickwork, because it is a lot of brickwork, which is what's been slowing me down. Now over here we've got a couple more barrels. You could imagine that maybe these had water or food in to transport up to the dining room and kitchen and so on, and other aspects of the castle. You've got another sconce on the wall here, as well. And then over here we of course have the star of this room, the waterfall. Now don't worry, we'll come over here in just a second. You can see of course above the wall, it's a little hard to get an angle for, we've got these little platforms that are coming up to the top, and this is not top level yet. There will actually be one more set of ladders, and these ladders are actually built using the 1x2 rail plate here, which usually have hinges on. I think they work for the Breath of the Wild style of ladders. I was originally going to use rail plates, but it just didn't quite look right. These to me look more like runs minifigure hands can fit on them, and the sort of bulbous bit on the end almost looks like they're connected, making them feel more like handles. So I'm happy with those. It sort of does look like an actual one of the little tiny ladders that we have in game, and you can see that's based off this little like embedded column right here, so that they're not actually in front of the water. So basically again, 2 more wooden platforms, and there'll be another step up to the little secret room which has the lever which turns the air on. So that's sort of like, I guess, the guard's watching room, or like the maintenance control room for the water pumps. So that will be something to explore in the future. Over here, of course, we have the actual waterfall, and I've tried to simulate some of the splashes by putting some upside down transparent white studs or clear studs in the grills, sort of like it splashed down, but in the end I used the little technique here where we stack studs over and over and over again and fill them in with white studs. And don't worry, there'll be more transparent ones up here as we go through, but the idea was just to contrast it and make it look like fast moving water. It's not the most advanced technique, maybe we'll come back and change it, but I really like it. It makes a nice splash of colour on an otherwise grey wall, which, speaking of, is what I did here. So once again, some added texture by having a variation in the wall thickness, some more of these braces over as you go through the wall to the corner, and here you've got what I'm calling like overflow pipes. So you could either see them as like sewage things, or just like water flowing from like maybe behind the scenes, or from some wheels, or from the docks, right? Sort of like a sluice, like a just sort of a way to get rid of excess water. And obviously it's pumping down into the main system down here. You can see they're all above the grill, and then they just fall, splash down. This is obviously a wet working environment, and everything goes down and is flooded back into the system, and obviously out into the water sources that is the rest of the castle. I was thinking maybe we should add like a little almost like a water gate in one of the rock walls. Obviously it'd be a non-canon detail, but where we could imagine that all this water is flowing out. If we look at the direction of its flow, you can see water from the rest of the castle flows down here and then comes out, and maybe on the rock segments somewhere over here we could have like a little gap, although I suppose maybe it links into that stagnant pool of water in the West Passage or something, or maybe it just flows out to sea through the docks. Either way, I've used the superhero power blast pieces here on a clip, and that's actually a technique that was used in Ninjago City Gardens to some extent, or one of the Ninjago City builds, and I really like it. It was also used in a Ninjago set as well. I just like the idea of breaking up this wall, and Transblue definitely does that. So some little overflow pipes here, non-canon additions. Then over here we've created a new couple of things. So I was thinking, okay, how is this room actually used? Yeah, it's a storage for like water bottles or like rum and other drinks, but this room probably also needs to be cleaned, right? It's like water filtration. So you've got some buckets so you could fill up water and take it down and then like mop the floors of the prison. You've got the mop broom to mop it up here, and a little sneaky Easter egg. I don't know how many of you guys will be familiar with Brillo pads, a form of sponge, at least here in the UK, probably everywhere. I think it might even be American. And I thought, that's cute. They probably wouldn't have them, it's medieval, but I thought it'd be a funny little addition. So we've got some Brillo pads here represented with a yellow grill plate on top of a dark green normal plate, and they're in a container like they've had a shipment of Brillo sponges to come and help clean the castle, or help the cleaning staff of the castle. So a nice little Easter egg detail in what amounts to an absolutely huge model. They barely are anywhere, so I think that's quite fun. Now I know I promised that I was actually going to finish it, but this took a lot longer than I thought, and I had another little side project I'm working on. So we're not going to do any other rooms today, and we're kind of taking a break from the water pump room because it's been fairly saturated, and we're going to move back to the outside of the castle for next week. You can see that everything's flush as it needs to be. I'm much happier having this gap here. Even if this angle isn't accurate, it's definitely closer than the 45-degree one I had, and I'm really, really pleased with how that's coming out. One last detail I added, of course, was to change a couple of these tiles to make them imperfect. Again, it's a lowdown in the castle, it's a heavily used area, there's going to be some imperfections in the floor. Now, to finish off for today, I'm going to show you some renders, so let's go take a look at those. Okay, so before I get to the main purpose of wanting to show you some renders at the end of the day, here are a couple that I took from minifigure perspectives of the water pump room. So here you can see the little entrance door, so what a figure would see as they were walking into this room from the ground floor. Not much to see, not very interesting. Here we've got one from up above, so you can see that I've actually now finished the walls off camera. Don't worry, we'll be taking a look at those very, very soon, and we'll come back to that. But here is the completed room. There's the little Brillo sponges. You can almost imagine someone standing on one of the wooden platforms at the other end of the room, staring down at the little blue things. Again, it's a real lot of grey, but I think I've broken it up just enough. Here's one from ground level, again, of the sponges and all the containers. And then lastly, one of the waterfall with the wooden platforms. You've also got one of the sluices. I might need to cover up behind those sluices in order to make them look a bit better. But anyway, the main focus of showing you today is this top-down view of the whole castle. Now I've shown you guys top-down views of what we've done so far. However, for the first time, I decided to donate the time and try and get you a rough idea of how many base plates is at least on the ground level. So you can see here, I've oriented it with this one little jutting out one, which is most likely where the front bridge is. Obviously, this isn't perfect, things are going to change, but you can see that we're sort of a quarter through the base, maybe a little bit more because some of it's quite bulky in the middle. The west passage would actually bring us around to the front. You can see there's sort of like 6 base plates in order to get that done. So that's sort of where I want to move. I sort of want to get the ground floor levels for all of the west passage stuff round to the front done, and that's sort of my goal there. But I just thought this would provide a healthy level of scale, considering that how long have we been doing this now? What, nearly 20 weeks, and that's spread over a couple of years, and this is how it is. Obviously, I realise we've been going up as well, like we've been covering over platforms, we've got giant Technic frames, and I'm not working on it all the time. Of course, stuff like the custom sets are still important to me, but I wanted to show you this because it's huge, it's shocking, this just really gives it an image, and my computer really did not enjoy putting this one together. However, we move on, we got there in the end, and this just gives you an idea about what's next, and also puts everything in perspective, so you can see stuff like the docks. This one actually has the old water pump room when it's still at an angle, because I was using an old file, and you can even see the Hinox room with the baby Hinox inside it. So I hope that gives you some clarification. I hope you enjoyed watching the waterproof room finally get its vindictive finish and actually be completed, almost. We'll be back in a couple of weeks with that one. However, before that, we're going to be going outside because I've been meaning to build a slope upwards for so long now, and I really want to cover over the docks. So, come back soon for that one, of course. Next week we'll have a non-Zelda related video, followed by another custom set, I think, if I'm remembering correctly, or don't change my plans. And of course, don't forget to go check out the instructions as well. There are lots of free ones available, and I'll be updating you on those as we go through. So leave me your thoughts down below in the comments, and I will see you next week. Bye-bye.